Welcome back everyone to Genshin Interact. In today's video, we'll be going over all of the standards in Genshin and how they might have changed due to Fontaine. No long intro today, so make sure to please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any future content.
Before we move on to the main content of the video, I need to reveal the 3 lucky winners of last week's giveaway. If you did not enter the giveaway, I will have a timestamp for you on screen to skip to what you came here for. Now, getting right to it, the 3 lucky winners are, and again, these will be on screen as well. First one we have is Navsandhu5597. We have Jatniel Jimenez 9725 and Surya Bell. Now, sorry if I butchered those names, but again, they are on screen, so congratulations. If you lucky fellas are here watching the video, then please comment on this video so we can get in contact with you. We want to make sure you get your free welcome. And it doesn't matter what you say either, since we go through all of our comments regularly anyways. For those of you who may not have known about this giveaway or just didn't win, don't feel discouraged. Believe it or not, there were only 29 entries in this giveaway, so the chance to have won that was 3 in 29. We may do this again in the future, so look out for the opportunity down the road. Now with that out of the way, on to the video.
So the first character we are going to be taking a quick look at is going to be Dehya, just kind of looking at how, personally, we're going to be kind of just going on and looking at all the different 5 stars for the standard characters that have maybe kind of changed due to a lot of the changes in Fontaine and how maybe, you know, some even the 2 new sets as well, and we'll be even bringing a special mention character as well. But first we are going to be talking about Dehya and how she kind of changed. Personally, at least how I saw her change, at least due to even specifically with someone like Noelle and Nahida, people were actually really looking at her at first and foremost kind of like nothing. Like, she wasn't really useful for a lot. She was supposed to be a huge damage character, kind of came in a little bit late, and it actually seemed like now she's kind of focusing on to be like an okay character to actually might use. And people use her in like a burning team with Nahida to create the burning reaction. And because of Noelle's really high Hydro application, you kind of need burning on. So having those 2 characters there, as well as maybe even throwing Furina in or whatever, just for the extra stacks from the fanfare or whatever to maybe increase Noelle's damage, that's a really cool idea that I've seen a lot of people use, and it actually makes some actual use out of Dehya, whereas before she really didn't have any at all.
Yeah, and I know people could argue that possibly, but and it's not to say that she didn't have use, but it's more or less that she has another use, you could say, and it's a little bit better, maybe a little bit more on par with the meta maybe, but even so, I don't personally think Dehya is a meta unit, and I think most of you would agree with me on that. I'm not going to bring Dehya into the abyss, even if I did have her. So I don't have her yet, but I still am looking to get her just because of, like you said, I do have Nahida. I don't actually have Noelle though, so maybe I would try something with my Ayato. I do have him, and it would just be fun to try different things out, just like you're saying. But yeah, I think with Furina especially, Dehya's HP mitigation mechanic that's very unique to her can actually help you with your Furina stacks, because that's HP change, right? It doesn't have to be down, you know, HP decrease specifically. It can go either way, and because it's HP change, it's going to help your Furina fanfare stacks.
Now looking into another character like Diluc, we are just going to be going in alphabetical order between the different 5-star standards, and Diluc is the next character that kind of comes up in that. And looking at Diluc, I know that a lot of people have been, you know, obviously first and foremost, especially with his weapon with Wolf's Gravestone, that, you know, you are going to be wanting to go heavily into a vaporized team usually, because that's just what he kind of mainly focuses into. It focuses a lot on the actual just straight up pyro damage as well as the vaporized hits that he gets from it. But now with a lot of, especially with the different changes in the different elements, or not, the new element in Dendro that came in Sumeru, and then obviously the new reactions that came with that, like Burgeon, a lot of people, I know even you, Rift, use Diluc now because you already have someone like Hu Tao, or some people may even like Yoimiya more than they like him, or maybe just some other character they want to use as a pyro DPS instead, like Yanfei. They want to use them instead of a character like Diluc, and so they kind of use Diluc instead of a vaporize or a melt character. They use him heavy EM, throwing on a bunch of different stuff on him on even a different set, not like Crimson Witch of Flames. And they actually go super high EM so that they can create the Burgeon reaction constantly with him. And I know especially as well with Nahida, creating that reactions very easily, and, you know, even using some 4-star characters, it's very easy to use as well. Yeah. Xingqiu, you know, can help with the normal attacks create the at least the bloom reaction, and then Diluc just has such high pyro application that creating the Burgeon core, on those cores is very nice.
Yeah, I think it's great that you bring that up because, in my personal opinion, before we had Furina, I think Xingqiu was a better option to use as just Hydro application. And it's not because of, I'm not looking at damage here. Now, if we're looking at damage, Yelan is better, but we're looking strictly at Hydro application for Diluc to Burgeon, right? So Xingqiu does a little bit better of a job at that, just because, especially if you're using Sacrificial, the energy fluidity of the team is a little bit more manageable and a little bit easier with Xingqiu. Also, Xingqiu has the, rain swords around him. That naturally also helps with Hydro application. That's something Yelan doesn't really have. So in terms of pure application and nothing else, I think Xingqiu fills that role a little bit better. And that's also just more attainable for a lot of players because maybe not everyone has Yelan, right? But when Furina came out, I think that was a significant upgrade in two different ways. She was an upgrade, I think, for Burgeon teams, but of course she was also a great upgrade for just those straight Vaporized teams for the Crimson Witch traditional build on Diluc with his weapon, Wolf's Gravestone. Just because Furina is a lot of off-field Hydro damage that is comparable, if not better, to Yelan, even without her weapon. But my Furina is still putting out numbers slightly higher than Yelan, even though Yelan will get out more frequent numbers at a faster rate. So going back to what I said about Burgeon Diluc, with the Hydro application that Furina does, it's going to be out for a long time. You don't have to think too hard about your rotation. So it works really well. And like you also mentioned, you don't really even have to have Nahida for this kind of team. Yeah, having Nahida may make it just higher damage output in general just because of her personal damage. But Colling's a free character from the Abyss, and she works perfectly fine for it. Also, using the Dendro Traveler works perfectly fine for it. So there's a lot of options, especially, with Dendro, with Furina, recent release. Diluc definitely has a lot of good, solid options for different team play and function.
Another character we're going to be looking at is Jean. Now, I know specifically with Jean, we were talking a little bit about Sumeru and whatnot, but Jean really hasn't gotten much love since probably the beginning of the game, or until they decided to not allow you to pick up your own co-op players and knock them around like it's a volleyball match. So I think Jean has not necessarily fallen off meta or whatever. I think at the end of the day, just there's not a lot to talk about here, and especially with a lot of new characters, it makes sense. But looking with new characters, and obviously specifically the Hydro Archon Furina, we have actually seen a lot more usage of Jean, and especially C2 Jeans. Considering she's a standard character, a lot of people, if they've been playing for a long time, or if you've just gotten what you may think is unlucky, but some people think is lucky, getting a C2 Jean, now there's a lot more usage to her actually being in a lot of teams, especially when you have the Hydro Archon to make a lot of good teams with that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, just because of Jean is a universal healer, and she can be a great support with, just being an Animo unit, allowing her to run something like Viridescent Venerer. She can bring a lot of value to a team, even before Furina, but now even more, just because she is a healer, and Furina loves that synergy with healers. So you have Furina and Jean, and you still have 2 slots, probably your DPS, and then another support or another sub DPS, and that's a solid team right there. Jean is going to help out a lot by giving the Viridescent Shred and helping with the fanfare stacks with Furina. So you already are getting a lot of damage bonus off of just those 2 characters alone. There's amazing synergy. And really, even if you don't have Jean, the idea with Furina is usually running a healer with her. It's not, required. You can run Furina as the only healer in the team because she does have that function too. It just means your fluidity, you're not going to be able to get the same rotation very consistently. At least from what I've learned playing with her, if you have that healer, it's going to be that much more fluid.
Now on to Keqing. We're looking at maybe how she kind of has changed specifically with some other characters. It's kind of weird because with Keqing, we saw a huge change in how she was looking and how she was changing in looking at Sumeru. And, it's funny, a lot of these characters actually did change a lot with Sumeru and how they could really change in the future with that. But I think, like you were talking about earlier, Furina's ability to create either bloom cores for instance, Keqing on a heavy elemental mastery build for Hyper Bloom, very similar to what you would do with Cyno, or maybe some other different ways to use her, like an aggravate build of some sort with 4-piece gilded. But, even some changes with, like, maybe that Maréchal C. There are so many different ways to kind of look and build as well.
Oh yeah.
And never mind even looking at the new sets that can come out in the future. I think there's just a lot of changes, and there's so many different things with heavy application from the Archon, as well as, you know, I know a lot of people even kind of want to use Keqing with another character, another DPS, and just kind of use them like off field for each other. So they just go through one rotation with one DPS, then switch to the next DPS and do a damage rotation. And they just do that a lot. I know that's a lot of people's kind of way to kind of change heavy support damage. They just kind of throw 2 DPSs in the mix.
For sure, I even do that. It's pretty fun too, especially for just like overworld things. Maybe you wouldn't do that in the Abyss. I mean, there's probably certain scenarios where that works, but it is definitely fun for like overworld stuff, and allows you to kind of use your bursts, even though if you don't really need to, you can just use bursts on cooldown. Like I know Keqing and Tighnari are a really great pair to do that kind of quick swap DPS thing with, because they both have low burst cooldowns, and they naturally help each other because one's Dendro, one's Electro, so if you are just quick swapping them back to back, they're buffing each other, essentially. The next character we're looking at is Mona. Now, you know, the gacha luck hasn't really been on my side on this one. I don't have Mona, but I know, Vixen, that you do, and you've built her, and so I believe you've built her on the 4-piece emblem, am I correct?
Yes.
So, yeah, and I think that is the recommended way of building her, just getting her good, you know, energy amount, and also that 4-piece emblem's going to help her burst damage, which is really kind of the star of Mona's kit. This is why Mona is good. And yeah, I think her skill, it definitely does have uses. It's Hydro application, it is a little bit of a taunt, and also does decrease defense on opponents. Am I right about that?
Yes.
But her burst is like a massive defense shred, and really increasing damage of anyone, really, because it's a defense shred, right? So she's a great character because of this, and Hydro is just a great element to throw in a team. Maybe if you don't have any other Hydro characters besides just like the basics like Barbara, Xingqiu, Mona's gonna be a great character for you, and maybe you should build her. If you don't have these other if she's like your only 5-star Hydro, she's gonna have value to build. And even if she's, you know, you have other 5-star Hydro, I know I do. I have Yelan, I have Furina, I have Yato, there's some other 5-star Hydros I have, but I still want Mona, and I still haven't gotten her for almost 2 years now. I don't know, did you have any other thoughts, Vixen?
Yeah, I did just want to say real quickly that, yes, as much as, you know, she does do some specific things with her kit, that burst is actually a damage bonus that she gives to other characters, so she does increase their damage. It does something similar to obviously decreasing the defense of opponents, but it's usually seen as a buff that she buffs the character, or she puts an omen on opponents, and then when you hit the opponent with it that has the omen on it, they have a damage increase from whatever damage hit they do. So it's this weird thing. It's kind of funny because they're her defense, and it's like, it's not necessarily a defensive thing, or like, because you are applying it on the thing, but it's also not necessarily a damage buff. It is a damage buff, but it's also not. So there's this weird thing with how her stacks work. But either way, the next character we look at besides Mona is Tighnari. And I know Tighnari looked amazingly good, especially throughout Sumeru, and is a really good unit to use alongside of Raiden, like we were just talking about a second ago, using 2 DPSs on the same team. And I mean, that team is obviously just absolutely good in and of itself.
It's pretty fun. I have Tighnari, and he's one of my favorite standard characters. I don't have Alhaitham, I know you do, but I wouldn't have to pull Alhaitham because I have Tighnari. So that's kind of maybe a plus there, because it's a role filled on my account that I wouldn't need to fill later unless I just want to make an upgrade with Alhaitham. But at this point, I built my Tighnari so well that I'd have to build Alhaitham pretty good to outclass my Tighnari, because I pulled a 5-star weapon just for him. So, and he plays very well. Like you were saying, I do play him with Raiden most of the time, because there's natural quick swap synergy right there, and then you just throw in 2 other flex characters, maybe another Dendro character for Dendro resonance, and another Electro character for that resonance, or even just maybe Kazuha for Raiden's sake, or, you know, I use Zhongli sometimes. It just makes the team easier to use. So definitely a lot of options, and he's very fun.
I think it's just something I do want to travel back to real quickly, is looking at Diluc and Keqing, considering they are the Pyro and the Electro character, not necessarily looking at Dehya. Fills a little bit of a different role. But these 2 characters, we didn't even recognize it. Just want to say it really quickly that Chevreuse coming on and making Overload a really big thing. Looking at these 2 characters, already knowing that a lot of people have Diluc maybe built on that Virgin team that has super high EM. or maybe a normal damage build with a little bit of EM for some sort of other different, type of build they use. Catching the exact same way, with aggravate, you go high into normal crit stats and attack stats, as well as getting a little bit of that elemental mastery, so that you can kind of do some extra damage with aggravate. I think looking at overload, that's going to be a pretty cool thing. It's not necessarily going to change the specific number, but it's going to add a very big overload hit as well on top of that. So maybe just a few things there. The only issue is, obviously the overload knockback that you have to deal with, but that is just something that I think Fontaine could change about these two characters as well, and I just wanted to put that in before we get to our last standard 5-star, which is Qiqi. Now, probably the almost cursed character on everybody's account, because everybody makes fun of getting Qiqi instead of any other character. Everybody talks about C7, C12ing her before they get any other 5-star character, or another standard. It's funny because I actually don't have too many Qiqis on my account, which I can be thankful for, but at the same time I know that a lot of people do, and looking at maybe how that has changed a little bit. Now, when we were thinking about coming up with a video for this week specifically, we were talking about the new set that was coming out. I know a lot of people are talking about specifically Baiju, as well as, Barbara or Kokomi as well. The new set that's coming out in the healing set, that's going to be helping the 2-piece helps healing bonus, and then the 4-piece has a very long definition. Basically, you heal for a certain amount during 6 seconds at the beginning. However much you heal, the next 5 instances of normal attacks, charge attacks, burst hits, skill hits, whatever, plunging attacks even, any type of damage afterwards, either 5 instances of those hits or up to 10 seconds, you get basically a percentage of the amount you healed as extra damage on top of each of those hits. Looking at how much you can max out the healing, though, at least on the set, from what we saw, the set isn't amazing, and so we were originally going to be talking about using specifically Qiqi for this set, but it's almost like maybe it's more or less a niche build or something fun to play around with, rather than necessarily almost a quote-unquote bringing Qiqi back into the meta type idea. There's not too much of a damage increase you really get from it.
Now, I know I'm still going to try that when the set comes out, because I haven't touched Qiqi yet, and I do want to, so I might try it out and see how it works for me. But it is something that we tried to look at, and it's just that the math right now, since once again the set doesn't actually exist yet, so anything could change. Maybe that percent will be better or whatever, but right now it doesn't look too impressive. So if you've already built your Qiqi on Ocean You'd Clam or something different, maybe you went physical damage route, and heck, you have a triple crown physical DPS Qiqi, that's awesome, first off. Then I wouldn't recommend rebuilding her. So that is, one thing we wanted to touch up on. But we actually do have a special mention character, and we know she's not a 5-star, but with Furina's release, she might as well be one now, and that is Noelle. With Furina's release, Noelle got such a massive boost to her potential. It's kind of insane what she can do. I don't have that much of an impressive Noelle. I built her, but she's on a Skyward Spine, guys. That's an energy recharge claymore. Her crit ratio is 70% crit rate to 100% crit damage. That's not that impressive on the crit damage side, right? And even still, I'm able to hit 52,000 damage. And that's thanks to Furina, a Bennett, and a Goro. That's usually the team I go if I'm just going full damage Noelle. It's crazy that she can do that, and I only have 100% crit damage. It makes me wonder, how hard can I hit if I had, the Red Horn Stone Thresher, Ito's weapon, or maybe something else, like just a crit weapon in general. So it's pretty easy to build Noelle now. Just go 4-piece Husk, give her some kind of damage weapon. I just use Skyward for high base attack, and it helps my energy problems with Noelle. So she definitely has had a resurgence with Furina, with getting stacks, because Noelle naturally has healing in her kit. When you use her skill, she gives herself that shield, and then she also has that chance to heal on every single hit, normal attack that she does, and that's healing everyone in the party, which is giving Furina a lot of stacks very quickly. So it's just the amount of synergy that just Noelle and Furina have, never mind the other 2 slots in the team. It works really well. So if you haven't built Noelle and you did pick up a copy of Furina, I would definitely recommend building Noelle, unless maybe you're planning to get Navia. That's filling the same role, right? So if you have a built Noelle, you can also this can kind of help answer a question on should you pull for Navia, right? And yes, we did have this video, our last video on the channel talking about that, but it's just kind of another helpful reminder, at least for me. You know, part of me wants Navia, but at the same time, I know I don't need her because I have a built Noelle that works perfectly with Furina, and I've even done abyss clears with that. What other thoughts did you have about that, Vixen?
I think that was basically it. Just the idea that the shield really helps out to make sure that you're maybe not killing your Noelle if, you know, your Furina is specifically draining your HP, and that's what you mainly want to use her for the extra high amount of damage. You know, Noelle, obviously with the burst, like you talked about, is healing multiple different characters, and she grabs multiple different stacks because of that on each character, because she's changing the HP of different characters constantly. You're not just changing the on-field character's HP, so that's very helpful as well as, you know, she's worked on other characters, but that's very nice. And you made a very good point that, you know, if you have Noelle, that's great, but if you're looking to maybe go for Navia specifically in that team, you're creating a lot of crystallized shards. So if you really just are thinking, oh, then I should build Noelle, that may be true, and if you really want to, go right ahead. It's a very good team, and obviously very probably much in the meta right now. Navia's coming out, probably has a little bit more in her kit that can maybe help out a little bit more, so maybe just keep that in mind as well. And if instead of using Goro, maybe you would want to use a different character, maybe like Yunjin, to maybe just increase some more normal attack damage if that's really what you want. But besides that, that's all we really have for today. We hope that you guys enjoyed really the kind of different types of videos that we've been kind of making, trying to steer clear of a lot of the only topical discussion type videos where it's, you know, only part of a series. So we hope you guys enjoyed kind of us just discussing the standard characters. And besides that, we'll see you in the next one.